So finally, after all this time, we're finally getting a Resident Evil 2 remake. But I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Now, of course, with Capcom realizing that they've struck gold with the zombie survival horror game, they did make a sequel, Resident Evil 2. Now, I only own the N64 version, and it is still a very enjoyable game, but it has not necessarily aged as well, which is to be expected. Now, Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 3, they do have their own, like, remastery, remake kind of. Unfortunately, I don't own Resident Evil 1 or the Resident Evil 1 remake, but I do own the GameCube version of Resident Evil 3, and again, very enjoyable, but it hasn't necessarily aged well. Now, one of the hopes for the Resident Evil 2 remake is that it will be more like the Resident Evil 1 remake, where they redid the voice acting, they redid cutscenes, they redid pretty much everything about the game, but still kept it true to the original with, you know, the limited ammunition and the tank controls, so they were still keeping it within the spirit of the original game. But after seeing the footage and the trailer and the gameplay of the Resident Evil 2 remake, I'm kind of skeptical, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Resident Evil series, the good and the bad. But I don't think that this remake of Resident Evil 2 is a step in the right direction. The Resident Evil 2 remake looks, to me at least, kind of like a Resident Evil skin of Resident Evil 4. It's, you know, third person over the shoulder. It's got this more like emphasis on combat rather than like, you know, running and hiding or surviving. And I feel like that kind of ruins the spirit of what made Resident Evil 2 popular. And being completely honest, I don't think that Resident Evil 2 really added that much to the series, except of course for my favorite character, Leon S. Kennedy. But just because Leon S. Kennedy is the main character in a game doesn't necessarily mean that the video game is good. Now, I'm not saying that I think it is going to be a bad game. I'm just worried that it's going to be more like Resident Evil 6 with like Resident Evil 4 elements rather than Resident Evil 2. I'm not saying that like they had to keep the low poly graphics or the bad voice acting or even the tank controls, because tank controls, they have not aged well. But I think that the way that they've gone about reskinning the Resident Evil 2 remake, it just doesn't feel like the same. And to be fair, I understand that, you know, with a remaster or a remake, you know, things are going to be different. That's perfectly acceptable. It's okay for things to change. But I'm worried that Capcom is going to start going down this, you know, this downhill slope, making subpar content, let's say. You know, how like with Resident Evil 4 was like the golden boy game. But then 5 and 6 and the other ones, you know, it's kind of bumpy. But then they made Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil 7 was awesome. But even with the Resident Evil 7 one, you know, they didn't have to make all that DLC for it. So, at the end of the day, this is one of the things that fans have been asking for a very long time. You know, give Resident Evil 2 the same remaster that you gave Resident Evil 1. So Capcom is very clearly giving the fans what they want. Is that a good thing? Well, we'll have to wait and see. I am still hopeful that the Resident Evil 2 remake will be good. I just hope it doesn't leave Capcom down another downward spiral where they've made subpar content. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a quick little Kirk talk on just thoughts about the Resident Evil 2 remake before it does come out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.